I never planned to stay in that apartment long. Just a temporary stop, I told myself, 6 months, maybe less. The walls were thin, the stairs creaked, and the kitchen window looked directly into hers downstairs. Not the best setup if you're someone who keeps late hours. But she was the landlady, and it was her house first. Every morning, she'd come out around the same time I was heading to work. She had a stainless steel thermos she always held in her left hand, the right one free to turn her keys or straighten her jacket. She wasn't the kind of person who lingered on sidewalks, always moving, always certain. And yet, sometimes, she'd pause just a second longer than needed when our paths crossed. I noticed that. The first real conversation happened in the laundromat 2 streets over. A random Tuesday night, machines humming, fluorescent light buzzing overhead. She walked in with a basket balanced on her hip. I was already there, folding shirts that didn't need folding twice, pretending to look busy. "You live upstairs and you still come here?" she asked, sliding coins into the slot. "The dryer in my unit squeaks," I said. "Sounds like a bird trapped inside." That made her laugh. Short, low, gone before I could hold on to it. Her basket was full of towels, neatly stacked. She pulled one out, gave it a sharp snap before feeding it into the machine. The sound echoed in the empty place. I wanted to ask her something, anything, but I got stuck halfway between ideas. Instead, I kept folding. "You always do that?" she said after a while. "Do what?" "Fold each shirt twice." I looked down. My hands were holding the same one for the 3rd time. I let out a breath, half embarrassed. Force of habit, I guess. She tilted her head, watching me like she was trying to decide if I was serious. Then she smiled in that small corner-of-the-mouth way, the kind that leaves before you're sure it was real. It should have ended there. 2 neighbors in a laundromat. But when I glanced back a few minutes later, her eyes caught mine. Not long, just long enough to say something unspoken. That was when she said it. "Don't look at me like that." Her tone wasn't sharp, more like a quiet warning, direct but softer around the edges. I froze, half a smile still hanging on my face, hands empty now. "Like what?" She shut the dryer door with her hip. "Like you're trying to figure me out." I wanted to answer lightly, let it roll off, but the words slipped before I could stop them. "Because you're irresistible." Silence stretched. Only the machine spoke, turning, hissing. She didn't look at me then. She looked past me at the window fogged from heat. But I saw the shift in her shoulders, a barely there pause before she bent down to pick up the rest of her towels. I thought maybe I'd gone too far, that she'd pull away, remind me of the line between landlord and tenant, older and younger, all the rules that kept things orderly. Instead, she just said, "Careful," and she said it so quietly, I almost thought I imagined it. Later, walking back to the house with my laundry bag cutting into my shoulder, I checked my phone out of habit. No new texts, no missed calls, just the same blank screen as always. But when I reached my door, I noticed an envelope slipped under it. No name, no handwriting, just folded plain paper. I stood there, shoes still on, bag sliding to the floor, staring at it. I hadn't received a letter in years, and for some reason I knew it was from her. The envelope had only one sentence inside. "Next time, bring your laundry downstairs. My machine doesn't squeak." I read it 3 times, trying to figure out if it was more invitation or correction. Either way, it was signed with nothing, not even her name, though I could hear her voice in it. So the next Saturday, I carried my basket down instead of out the door. She was already in the kitchen, rinsing mugs at the sink. The radio was on, something old and crackly, soft enough not to fill the air. "You listened," she said without turning. "Guess I owed you one." She slid one mug toward me. Steam curled out, green tea, not coffee. "You don't strike me as a tea drinker," she said. "I'm not," I admitted, wrapping my hand around the cup anyway. "But I could start." That made her glance up, quick, measuring. She wore no makeup that morning, hair tied back loose. It made her look different, less composed maybe, but also closer somehow. The washing machine thumped on the other side of the wall. We sat across from each other at the small table. She leaned on one hand, the other curled loosely around her mug. Out of nowhere, she said, "When I was your age, I wanted to move to Paris. Thought I'd study architecture, sketch bridges, maybe live above a bakery. Why didn't you?" She shrugged, staring at the tea as if the answer might float there. Life, marriage. People don't tell you how quickly later becomes never. Her voice carried something I couldn't name, but it sat between us like another chair. I wanted to ask if she regretted it, but I didn't. Maybe she didn't want to admit it aloud, or maybe I was afraid to hear her say yes. Instead, I told her something I hadn't meant to. I applied for a job out of town. Haven't told anyone yet. Feels like if I say it, it'll vanish. Her eyes lifted, steady on mine. "And if you get it? Then I leave." She nodded slowly, as if she already knew. Silence pressed in. The radio cut to static for a moment before the music returned. I thought about how close her hand was to mine on the table, just inches, and how easy it would be to close that space. But then I saw all the reasons not to, the years between us, the way she'd said careful, the fact that my rent check went into her account. So I did nothing. The kettle whistled faintly as if reminding her of something. She stood, reached for the counter behind me, brushing my shoulder as she passed. It was nothing, barely contact, but I felt it long after she moved away. When I finally left, basket lighter, phone still silent, I realized I couldn't stop replaying that touch. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next few weeks blurred into ordinary things. Mail left at the wrong door, the thump of her footsteps downstairs, the faint smell of her cooking drifting up through the vents. I told myself I was imagining it, that pull toward her. But then she'd catch me off guard. A look held too long. Paused before saying goodnight. One evening I came home early. The hallway smelled faintly of rain and detergent. Her door was half open, a box pushed against the frame. "Can you help me with this?" she asked, breathless, like she'd been dragging it alone for too long. I set my keys down, bent to lift the box. It was heavier than I expected, full of books. Old ones, spines cracked, pages yellowing. She followed me up the stairs, watching. "You make it look easy," she said. I laughed, shifting the weight to my hip. "Guess it's all the folding practice." Her smile lingered a beat too long. Then it faded. She stepped back, as if remembering something. Inside my place, I set the box by the window. She stayed at the threshold, hand resting lightly on the doorframe, like crossing it meant more than it should. "Tea?" I asked without thinking. Her fingers tapped once against the wood. Then she nodded. We sat opposite each other again, this time at my table. No radio, no noise except the kettle cooling. She looked around, eyes landing on the stack of half-read novels by my bed, the empty coffee mugs, the phone on the counter that never buzzed. "You must get lonely up here," she said softly. I shrugged, trying to play it off. "I keep busy." Her gaze stayed on me, too steady. "That's not what I asked." I opened my mouth, then closed it. There was something in her tone, something that said she knew the answer already. A knock interrupted, sharp, careless. My friend Mark, dropping by unannounced, leaning against the door with his usual grin. "Didn't know you had company," he said, eyes flicking from me to her. She straightened instantly, a polite nod, then her coat over her arm. "I was just leaving." Her voice was different, lighter, distant. I wanted to say something, stop her, but she was already in the hall. Mark was saying something about dinner, about plans, but I barely heard. When I finally went back downstairs later that night, her light was still on. I hesitated outside her door, hearing faint movement inside. I almost knocked. Almost. Instead, I walked back up, sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the box of books she'd left behind. One of them had slipped halfway open. I reached for it, fingers brushing the worn cover. And there, in her handwriting, faint pencil marks along the margins. Notes, underlines, a name written once, then crossed out. The air felt charged, like I was standing too close to a storm. And when I closed my eyes, I could still feel the moment in my kitchen. the way her hand had hovered over her mug, almost reaching toward mine. We had been one breath away, just one. It happened on an ordinary evening after rain. The pavement still dark, the air carrying that damp, clean smell that makes you walk slower. She was sitting on the bench by the corner store when I saw her. No umbrella, hair a little frizzed from the weather. A grocery bag rested by her feet. She didn't notice me at first. "You waiting for someone?" I asked when I reached her. She looked up, startled, then softened. "No, just didn't feel like going home yet." I sat down beside her. Not close, just enough that our shoulders were almost level. The bag rustled when she shifted it. Or maybe that was me, fidgeting. We talked about nothing at first. The cracked pavement. The way the rain made the streetlights blur. My shoes squeaking. Then she said quietly, "Your friend. The one who came by the other night. Mark." She nodded. Her eyes stayed on the wet street. "He seems young." I frowned. "He's my age." "That's what I mean." I wanted to ask what she meant exactly, but I didn't, because I knew. The way she said it, flat, clipped, wasn't about Mark. It was about me. "You don't have to worry," I said after a pause. "I'm not like him." Her laugh was quick, without humor. "You're exactly like him. You just don't see it yet." That stung, though I wasn't sure why. "Is that what you think of me?" She finally turned, met my eyes. There was no smile, no softness. Just something fragile breaking through. "I think you're too young to know what you want, and I'm too old to pretend I don't." Silence. Rain dripping from the awning above. My hands curled in my lap, restless. "You think I don't know what I want?" I asked. My voice came out lower than I expected. Her gaze held mine. "Tell me, then." And I almost did. The words were right there, heavy in my chest. I wanted to tell her about the letter, about the tea, about how I hadn't been able to sleep without replaying the brush of her shoulder in my kitchen, about how I hadn't sent a single text to anyone else in weeks because every thought had been circling back to her. But something in her expression stopped me. The caution, the guilt, the years that sat between us like another presence on the bench. I swallowed the words, let them dissolve. Instead, I said, "I don't want to leave here. Not yet." Her breath caught so faint I might have imagined it. She looked away again, out at the streetlight's halo, lips parting like she was about to say something. Something final, maybe. But she didn't. Her hand was resting on the bench, inches from mine. I shifted just slightly, close enough to feel the warmth, not close enough to touch. And for the longest moment, neither of us moved. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely more than air. "What are you really asking me?" The morning after the bench, I didn't see her. No thermos at the gate, no quick nod in passing. The house felt quieter than usual, though maybe it was just me listening too hard. By the third day, I told myself it didn't matter. People get busy. People avoid things. But when I saw her car still in the driveway, curtains drawn, I couldn't pretend anymore. I left my rent check on the counter instead of handing it to her. No note this time. No excuse to knock. The weeks stretched. I found myself walking slower past her door, pausing like maybe she'd open it. She never did. Then one night, the sound of voices downstairs. Low, unfamiliar. A man's laugh, carrying faintly up through the vent. My chest tightened before I even thought about it. I sat on the edge of my bed, shoes still on, listening like someone starved. Later, when the laughter stopped, I went downstairs for water I didn't need. Her door was half shut. Inside, the glow of a lamp. A shadow moving across the wall. Then silence. The next morning, she was at the mailbox. Hair pulled back, sunglasses hiding her eyes though the sky was overcast. "Morning," I said, voice catching. She hesitated. "Morning." I wanted to ask who he was. I wanted to ask why she hadn't answered, why she'd vanished from the small rhythm we'd built. Instead, I handed her a flyer that had been slipped into my box by mistake. She took it without meeting my eyes. "Thanks." And that was it. The days that followed were worse. Every sound downstairs made me pause. Every silence stretched too long. I found myself drafting texts I never sent. Are you okay? Did I say something wrong? Was it him? Each time, I erased the words before they reached her. One evening, Mark asked if I wanted to join him for drinks. I almost said yes, but the thought of leaving the house, leaving her, made me shake my head. Not tonight. He studied me. You've been different. I forced a smile. Just tired. But when he left, I sat by my window staring at hers. Curtains still drawn. On the counter, my phone lit up. A draft I'd forgotten to delete. I keep thinking about that night on the bench. My thumb hovered over send. I didn't. I put the phone face down as if that would erase the pull. The silence in the room pressed in, thick as rain clouds. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. It was late when she knocked. I almost didn't hear it. 3 soft taps. The kind you give when you're not sure if you want the door answered. I opened it anyway. She stood there without a coat. Cardigan pulled close around her, hair loose, eyes tired but steady. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Your light was on, she said, as if that explained everything. I stepped aside. She hesitated, then came in. The air between us carried something fragile, like one wrong word could send her back out the door. In the kitchen, I poured water without asking. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Not defensive, just holding herself. Finally, she exhaled. The other night. You probably heard. I nodded. No point in lying. He's my ex, she said. Her fingers tapped against her arm. He shows up sometimes. Says he wants to talk. What he really wants is to remind me I failed. I didn't know what to say to that. The glass in my hand suddenly felt heavy. She went on, softer now. I thought I was done needing people. That it was safer, simpler. Then you? She stopped, shook her head. You're too young to carry someone else's unfinished business. Her voice wavered, the first crack I'd heard. I set the glass down, leaned against the table to steady myself. You think I don't know the difference between wanting something and being reckless? Her eyes lifted, sharp and wet at once. I know exactly what this is, I said, my voice quieter than hers now. And I know what it isn't. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Every unsent text, every pause at her door, every moment folded twice like those shirts in the laundromat. Her arms loosened. She pressed a hand flat to the counter, grounding herself. You scare me, she admitted. I swallowed. You scare me too. That broke something, not a wall, not completely, but enough for her to step closer, slow like testing thin ice. She didn't touch me. She didn't have to. The space between us hummed, charged, unbearable and steady all at once. I don't want to hurt you, she whispered. Then don't, I said. Her laugh came out shaky, half a sob. She reached for the glass of water I'd set down, fingers brushing mine. Just a second. Enough. We stood like that, neither pulling back. No declarations. No promises. Just 2 people finally admitting the weight they'd been carrying. She looked at me then, really looked, and something in her face softened. Okay, she said. It wasn't an answer. It wasn't a plan. It was just enough. Time didn't change everything at once. It never does. But slowly the rhythms shifted. The mornings stopped feeling like silence and started feeling like routine again. She still left with her stainless steel thermos at 8:47 sharp, but sometimes there was a second one waiting on the counter for me. Black coffee, exactly how I took it. I still folded my shirts twice at the laundromat, but now she laughed when she caught me, shaking her head as if to say some habits never die. We never called it anything, never sat down and gave it a name, but there was an ease now in the pauses, a warmth that filled the space where tension used to sit. Once, sitting on the same bench where it all started, I asked if she ever thought about Paris. She didn't answer right away, just sipped her tea, eyes on the wet pavement like before. Then she said, "Not anymore. I think I found my bridge." I didn't push her to explain. I didn't need to. The ex stopped showing up. Or maybe he still did, but she stopped letting him in. I never asked. It wasn't my victory to claim. What I noticed instead were the small things. Her hand brushing mine when she passed me a cup. Her voice softer when she reminded me to lock the gate. The way she stayed on the steps a moment longer when I came home late, waiting, even if she pretended she wasn't. Some nights, she'd sit in my kitchen, cardigan draped over the chair, reading aloud the notes she'd scribbled in her old books. I'd listen, not to the words, but to the sound of her. Steady, calm, like the rain on a roof. And it wasn't perfect. We were still careful in public, still measuring what we showed. Some days she pulled back, remembering the years, the difference. Some days I wondered if I was enough to steady her. But the pauses between us no longer felt like distance. They felt like breath. Looking back, I realize I don't remember the moment we crossed from uncertainty into something else. Maybe it was never one moment.